My name is Sylvia Arthur. I'm the founder of Libreria Ghana, which is actually in the process of changing name to the Library of Africa and the African Diaspora, or LOATAD for short. And that's a library and a research institute and an archive and eventually a museum space in Accra, Ghana. And we have a focus on books by writers of African descent. So that's African, African American, Caribbean, Black European, Black British, the whole Black world.
So what is the essence of LOTAD? Where did the idea come from, and what inspired you or motivated you to start it?
Okay, so I've been running Libreria Ghana for the last 2 years. I opened it in December 2017, having moved from London to Ghana in June 2017. And I didn't move to Ghana with the idea of doing the library, although it had always been something that I'd wanted to do since about, I would say 2010 or 11, when I lived in Brussels and I was working in Brussels, and I had all these books. I have always been a big reader since I was a really young age. And when I moved to Brussels, I was in a new city by myself. I was kind of lonely and alone. And one way that I was using to kind of get over that was to buy loads of books and read loads of books. And so I did that. And so I had all these books, and I just thought to myself, well, actually, first of all, they became too many to accommodate in my flat in Brussels. And then I'd have some in my flat in London as well. Mm-hmm. And they were just so many that I would ship them to my mum's house in Kumasi in Ghana. And so when I would go and see my mum or go to her house, I would be like, all these books are just sitting here and they're not being read. And it's such a waste. And so that's when I had the idea for the library in 2011. But when I moved to Ghana in June 2017, it never occurred to me that I would start the library then. And it just so happened by chance that I spotted this office space near a pharmacy where my mum used to go all the time. And I looked up at the building and I saw this empty space, and I went to see it and I was like, wow, this would be perfect for a library. And within 24 hours, I'd signed the contract and got the space. And that was in September 2017, and I opened it in December 2017. So having done that library for 2 years, we literally just closed that particular space in January 2020. And it was such a learning experience, those 2 years. I met people from all over the world. There was a lot of good publicity around the library as well. And so people would come from America, people from Haiti, people from the UK who'd read about it online, and they would message me and say, I'm coming to Ghana, I would love to visit the library. And so, yeah, I met loads and loads of people from all over the world. The support for it has been amazing. And we used to do all kinds of things, like we do author readings. We've had lots of great people come and read, like Wayatu Moore, Jessica Care Moore. We've had, what else have we done? We've done loads of events, cool events, just all kinds of things. We have lots of talks and discussions about ideas and current affairs. And it's just become a real hothouse for ideas and for people. And yeah, it's just the whole 2 years was a great learning experience. And now we're on to the next stage of development.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fabulous. So why did you decide to move to Ghana from London? Why Ghana in particular?
Yeah, I mean, my parents are both from Ghana. I wasn't born there or raised there. But, you know, I'd been living in Brussels, as I said. In fact, since 2010, I haven't really lived in London full time at all. So first of all, it was Brussels, and I was there for 2.5 years. Then it was Barcelona. I was there for a year. And then I traveled a lot to the United States and to Canada as well. And so it got to the stage in 2017. Obviously, we just had the referendum for Brexit. I worked with the European Commission in my day job. I work in corporate communications on freedom of movement, as it happened. And so it got to that point where I was just like, okay, things are really kind of not good in the UK at the moment. I was thinking, should I go back to mainland Europe, maybe to Brussels or somewhere else? And I just thought Ghana was the best option, really. And I wasn't actually the one who thought about Ghana in that sense. I was actually on a writing residency at Hedgebrook, which is a women's only writing residency in Washington State in a place called Whidbey Island. And you're literally on this island in a forest, in the middle of a forest, and there are 6 individual cottages, and each writer is in each of these cottages. And I had a friend that I met there called Saskia Jane, who was a mixed race, half Indian, half German writer. And she split her time between Germany and India. And she was the one who actually said to me, well, why don't you consider Ghana? Because at that time, my mind was totally looking at somewhere in Europe or potentially in America. And when she said that, it kind of clicked. It just all kind of made sense. And so, yeah, I went there initially for 3 months, and 3 years later, here I am still. So,
and you still split your time between Ghana and London?
Well, actually, I spend more time in Ghana now than I do in London. I probably spend, well, probably about, I would say 2 months of a year in London at the moment. But I come back here quite often. So I'm a Londoner. So, yeah.
So apart from running the library, what else do you do in Ghana that has to do with the library? Yeah,
so we do all kinds of outreach work that is attached to the library, and that's actually the best thing that's arisen out of having the library. It's the outreach work that has come out of it. And so, for example, we have little librarias. We have 2 of them at the moment. There's one in Ashaiman, which is known as a very, what's the word? I mean, they would call it a ghetto. I don't really like that word, but yeah, they would call it like an urban ghetto.
Underprivileged area.
Yes, a very underprivileged area. And I was lucky enough to be introduced to a woman called Auntie Grace, and she is the founder of that school. And we went to see the school. We were introduced by a young lady called Rosemary, who was a student at Ashesi University, which is one of the major innovative universities in Ghana. And she had come to the library and said, I'm doing a profile on change makers, and I've just profiled this woman called Auntie Grace, who founded a school in Ashaiman, and I think you should really meet her. So she took me down there, and when we went there, the school is not a school as we would know it here. It's really just a skeleton of a building. But she started it in the compound of her own house. And she had like 200 or 300 kindergarten age children in the compound of her house. And this is not a big house that she had, but she is a public school teacher by profession, a Ghana Education Service teacher by profession. And obviously she noticed that there was a lot of crime by young people in the area, and there wasn't a school in the area to serve them. So she decided to start this school. And over the last 7 years, she has managed to build this other structure that I'm talking about, which is what we call the junior high school. So when I went there, there were hardly any books in that school at all, apart from academic books. There were no reading books. There were no books that children would read for pleasure. They did have 15 Kindles, but 15 Kindles between 500 children, I mean, it doesn't really cut it. So I asked her if she has a space that could be used or transformed into a library. And she showed me this space, which was a very small room that was currently being used as a teacher staff room. There were no windows, there was no door. So I said, like, how much would it cost to do this? And I'm telling you, it was actually minimal to do this kind of thing. And I think that's the thing. There are so many ways that you can make a difference that don't actually cost a lot of money. So she said, you know, it costs this much money to do it. So I said, okay, go ahead and do it. Obviously, luckily, we already had the books, so that wasn't a cost that we had to incur. So that was the first little Libreria that opened, and that's in Ashaiman. And then we have another one in Kumawu, which is in the Ashanti region, about 4 hours outside of Accra by car. And that's in another school as well. We do a program called Market Akinkang, and Akinkang in Tree means reading, so market reading, where we go to markets in Accra and do reading and creative play with the children of market women. And yeah, we do all kinds of outreach work as and when we can, and it's definitely the most rewarding. There are so many things that you can do that don't require a lot of money to do. And I think when people think about trying to do something or give back, they think that, you know,
it has to cost a lot.
Yeah, it has to cost a lot. But sometimes it's just about time. Sometimes it's about seeing ways you can use your resources differently. Like, you know, you may have books lying around at home that you're not using that somebody else could put to good use. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, as I've said before, I don't think, you know, I get as much pleasure out of it as, you know, whoever you're working with does. So it's not entirely selfless. It's actually quite selfish as well. So,
but in a good way.
In a good way. But